So there's two types of studs when you're building construction. You have steel, metal, or aluminum, whatever you want to refer to them studs, and you have wood or stick studs. Because I'm focusing primarily on residential and DIYers or someone just looking to get in the trade, I'm going to use this project with your wood studs. Now these are standard 2x4s. Sometimes houses are built with 2x4s or 2x6s. I believe 2x6s are more for the exterior walls. These are 2x4s, meaning that they're 2 inches thick and they're 4 inches wide. Now, in reality, they're actually only 1.5 by like 3.5. They're not true 2x4s, but that's what we call them in the industry. And they're not 8 foot or 96 inches in length. Okay, you can get those at any box store. The second thing you're going to need is something to cut them with. You can use a circular saw. You're going to need a miter saw or a table saw, and you can even use a hand saw, but depending on how big your project is, you might be cutting for a while. You also need something to fasten them with. You can use screws or you can use nails. You'll need something to apply those fasteners with, so impact, screw gun, drill gun, a nailing gun, or even a hammer. Again, depending on how big your job is, then that's going to depend on how much you want to do with that. Other items you're going to need is a straight edge. In this instance, I'm using a speed square. You're going to need a marker, something to mark with, which is a pencil, and something to measure. I have a measuring tape, and the pouches are optional depending on how big your project is. So for this portion of the video, I went ahead and I already designated this area for my build out. So what you're going to do first is you're going to measure your distance. Here I'm going to go 75 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your tape measure, you got your pencil, you got your straight edge. You're going to measure out 75 inches. Make a mark on there. Take your straight edge, and you're going to mark it. Okay, let's go over and cut them out. So I do want to shoot a quick video. If you're going to be doing a lot of framing or cutting a lot of studs, it is better to do a setup where you have it on, say, 2 sawhorses. I don't really recommend you holding the 2x4s and cutting them in your hand. Again, gloves, eyewear, PPE would be ideal. And that way you don't have any kickbacks or anything falling in your eyes. But you're just gonna do it, put it on your table saw here that you have, follow your line. Gives you a lot more stableness to cut with, and that way you're not just holding it in your hand. All right, I'll see you on the next one. So something I wanna share on framing. When you're going to have your top and your bottom plate, and we'll get into that more in a little bit, you're going to know that your studs are going to be 16 inches on center. Talk more about that in a little bit also. But I have my top and my bottom plate here. I have my measuring tape ran from the front to the end, and I marked off where every 16 inches is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my speed square and I'm going to have them lined up. I'm going to go ahead and make a mark. Everywhere that's 16 inches. That way when I go to put my studs in later, I already have my lines lined up for my top and my bottom, knowing where they should be. All right, what's the next one? Okay, so this video I want to do is I want to show you how to square the framing and how we're going to connect the studs to the top and bottom plate. So I already went ahead and made all my cuts. Obviously, all my studs and bottom and top plate are laid out. I have my marks, 16 on center, like I showed you in another video. I went ahead and I already shot off the 4 corners, but let's square it off. So how you're going to square it off is you're going to take one angle, one corner, and you're going to drag it all the way across. About 114.5. Then you're going to take the other side and go diagonal across the other way. And that's a little bit off. I'm sorry, 114 and 3/4. 114 and 3/4. So on either side, you're going to take your measurement and go diagonal, and then go the other way and go diagonal. And if you get the same number, so I got 114 and 3/4, 114 3/4, that means I'm square. Now I can go ahead and I can tack on my middle studs. Now I already used the gun just because it's going to be quicker and I need to build these modules for the setup. So I'm going to show you again, least expensive to most expensive. So starting, excuse me, starting with the hammer and nails. I'm just going to go ahead and do this first one. If you can see it, I have a line here that shows me I'm 16 on center. I'm just going to line it up. It'll probably tighten up when I go on the bottom side, but there's that way. The second one is I'm going to use a screw gun. Now I recommend you drilling first. It's not necessary, but it'll help out. It'll help out when you're going in. Then you're going to take your screw gun, screw it in, and the final one is I'm using a nail gun from Harbor Freight. With this you do need a compressor. That's why it gets a little bit more pricey, but this is a lot faster. You're going to line it up, eyeball the middle, and shoot it in. Any three of these ways will work, whatever, again, PB&J, your project, your budget, your job size, that's going to depend on what you're going to use. I'm going to finish nailing off the rest of these, and then I'll see you guys in the next frame. So two things I want to talk about that maybe I just want to clarify. When you're going to cut your lumber, when you're going to make your mark, you're going to want to take your square, and there's a little lip on it right here. There's a little, you can see that lip. So that's to catch the edge of your stud, right? So when you're going to make a stud, or make a line, I'm sorry, you push that tight wherever your mark's at, and then you just draw your line, right? And that gives you a straight line. So that way it doesn't go anywhere. The second thing I want to show you was whenever you're squaring off your, your framing, like I said in the previous video, you're going to go diagonal one way, diagonal the other way to go ahead and square it off. Make sure you have the right numbers. And it can be a little bit off, like 16th or an 1/8, but if you need to adjust it, what you're going to do is you're going to adjust it left or right, right? You're going to move it, you can shift it down, or you're going to shift it up to move it, to square it up. And then once you put your center studs in, that's what's going to give it its rigidness and not allow it to move anymore. But this is going to allow, first, just doing your perimeter studs in place is going to allow you to move, so that way you can get that in square. And then once it's square, you set your center studs in and you go ahead and finish nailing it off. Okay, thanks.